myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright when they come and say to you.
Hi, welcome along to NUFC Matters. It is Those Were the Days with George Mitchell, and we go on a journey back in time with George. Which season are we looking at today, George?
77-78, Steve.
77-78, and as I always say, over to you, mate.
Right. Well, it's interesting, and there's the squad, but it not only interested in football terms, of course. What I should have said perhaps last time and this time is that it's Queen's Jubilee year, it's a Silver Jubilee year, so all sorts of things were happening. But in football terms, particularly with Newcastle United, the previous season, we'd performed well above where people thought we would be and ended up at fourth place. So this particular season, we end up in the UEFA Cup, which is real Europe. I mean, we'd ventured into all sorts of Mickey Mouse, into Toto Cups and all that sort of thing. But this is really a venture into real European stuff for a very long time. And it was welcomed. Obviously, people were thrilled to bits that this was the case. But there was a bit of a worry that would overperform, and how would we cope? Not too dissimilar to what some people are saying about at the moment. Too soon for Europe. There's no such thing. There's no such thing in my view. Get in when you can. Just to set the scene a little bit. As I say, it was the Queen's Jubilee. If you're interested in music, the top 10. Tokyo Joe by Brian Ferry. Now, that has a personal line because Brian Ferry was a student at the university while I worked there. He was in the fine art department, but he had a fancy for one of the girls in our office, so we used to see quite a lot of the young Brian Ferry.
I'm actually distantly related to Brian Ferry as well.
Really?
He was my mum's third cousin. My mum's cousin 3 times removed.
Well,
he's actually on the Ferry side of the family in our family.
Right. Well, he had a thing about one of the girls in our office, so we used to see him popping in and out all the time. And then 2468 Motorway with Tom Robinson, the Tom Robinson Band, and Rocking All Over the World, Status Quo, and Don't Believe a Word, Thin Lizzy. Now, I've got to confess, there's very few of them that rock my boat in terms of music, but that's what was top of the pops at the time. And in terms of the pictures, if you go to the cinema, well, that's a different matter. Number one, the most favourite was Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. And then Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Saturday Night Fever, and Smokey and the Bandit. Well, they were all films I liked. I don't mind admitting that. And the top one had a particular impact on our family because a certain young man who goes by the name of Geordie Dentist at the moment was desperate to be the first in his school or in his class to see Empire Strikes, the Star Wars New Hope at the Odeon in Newcastle. And of course, he tried to persuade me to take him, and I said, no, I'm not, because you could guess it was going to be a queue. But he had an ally in his granddad, Harry. So he went and seen Harry, and Harry said, yeah, I'll go with you, son. And then the next time I seen my father, I got a shellacking for saying I wouldn't go. So I ended up going as well. And so, yeah, all three were queuing at the Odeon cinema for this picture starting. But what a time we had. It was already full when we got there. So the queue was round the Odeon, down the alleyway, down the side and round the back. And we were somewhere in the middle of all of that. And the Odeon had just been turned into a 5-cinema complex. And the manager, quick as a flash, and I thought good thinking on him, closed 2 of the other cinemas and put Star Wars on them as well and filled them up with people. And still the queue was round the Odeon. Anyway, we eventually got in, and it was great. And of course, Neil went to school cock hoop because there was nobody else from the school had been, etc., etc. The only thing I should tell you is that from then on, he and my father seen Star Wars: A New Hope about 10 bloody times in the next few weeks. Every time they went out, they ended up the bloody Odeon watching Star Wars. And my father was as big an addict as he was. So you know, him and Harry, as you probably guess, Steve, always hit it off, and that was another battle that Harry won anyway. So that was important to us as a family. The other thing I should say is that because it's Queen's Jubilee, my Marjorie decided that the street would have a Jubilee party, and I thought she was going to go around the street and collect money to have a party. Well, that didn't happen. What happened was the Mitchells had a Jubilee party, and Marjorie invited the whole street in. So we opened our doors at midday on the day of the party, and we were still serving hot and cold food till 9 o'clock at night. And everybody in the street came, and helped by our friends, the Fergusons, Sheila and John Ferguson. Their son was Neil's best friend for years, and George and Isabel Davis from Gates. They helped to set it up. George and Isabel were scout friends, and they put a huge Union Jack in the middle of my lawn on a pole to celebrate it all. So you can see why 77 was such a big year for us, and a big year personally. Well, you'll understand when I say it was the year I attained the chair King Solomon my lodge, and what a fantastic year I had doing that as well. And that's something else you and I could talk about forever. Anyway, let's get on to the football. But it was an incredible year, and an optimistic year from a Newcastle point of view, because. And there's Richard Dennis with some of the lads, Nat Riss, Burns and Jeff Nulty. You know, there was a good feel about it. I mean, finishing fourth was no small achievement. Now, that's a picture of Bill McGarry, who will become, halfway through this season, he'll become quite prominent in what we're doing. And it's, yeah, we everybody was looking forward to this taking place, and because we'd outperformed the season before, and people hoped that this would carry on. But of course, this is Newcastle we're talking about. So before we kick a ball in the league, we've got a number of friendlies, haven't we? We went on a friendly tour of Holland, and we played SC Sports Club Telstar. We played Sparta Rotterdam and drew, lost 2-1. Played a Sparta Rotterdam and drew 2-2. And FC Volendam, which we lost 2-1. And then we came home and had an away fixture at Chesterfield and won that one 4-2. And back to... oh, yes, I managed to find a program for that one. And the Spire-ites, of course, for anybody who's interested in why people have nicknames, Chesterfield's the Spire-ites because Chesterfield has the twisted spire on the top of the church, which has been like that for centuries. And so that's where they get their nickname. So, and then we came back to Carlisle and had a friendly at Carlisle, which we drew 1-1. Now, I suspect the trip to Holland was an initiation into what we might face in the UEFA Cup, and that would make sense to me. But there's 3, 5, 6 games before we even kick a ball in the league. But never mind, that's Newcastle United for you. First home game was a league game, was a home game against Leeds United, who were being touted as possible challengers for the title. And very strong team. We fielded a team that was almost identical to the one that finished the previous season. Mick Mahoney, Irvin Natras, Alan Kennedy, Tommy Cassidy, Aidan McCaffrey, John Bird, Stuart Barraclough, Paul Clennell, and Mickey Burns, Alan Gowland, and Tommy Craig. And that was, as I say, virtually the team that played throughout the previous season. 37,000 at the game for the first game, which was... a good crowd, and Leeds, of course, come with the manager Jimmy Armfield, ex-England fullback, got a new goalkeeper, Dave Stewart, joined them, but after that it was old hands like Paul Rainey, Trevor Cherry, Gordon McQueen, big blonde centre half, Paul Madeley, Eddie Gray, Peter Lorimer of 2 cannonball feet. Peter Lorimer, you could hit the ball with either foot and burst the net if he got hold of it. David McNiven was a Scottish signing they made, and then they bought a Geordie from Burnley called Ray Hankin as centre forward, big busting centre forward who lived just round the corner from me in Wallsend. And in fact, his family still live in that part of Howden where I used to live. And they bought Tony Curry from Sheffield United, of course, a very talented player, and a left-sided player called Arthur Graham, who all enhanced the team, which is why pundits were keen to suggest that they might be challenging for the league. Good game, always is a good game against Leeds. Hard, but fair, and it was going our way. Alan Kennedy scored in 9 minutes. Ray Hankin equalised in 21 minutes. Nicky Burns put one in the lead in 25 minutes. And then Peter Lorimer on 49, they got a penalty, and Peter Lorimer nearly burst the net with the penalty to get 2-2. And then, lo and behold, right with the last kick of the game, Mickey Burns waltzes through the Leeds defence and scores the winner. And we start the season with a 3-2 victory over Leeds, which is no mean feat because, as I say, everybody was saying this is the team to beat. They're going to win the league, etc., etc. So we get rid of Leeds, and then as a reward for that, on a Tuesday night, we have to go to Anfield. We'll go to Liverpool, and whatever might befall, we're there. Again, a place where we always have a good game. 49,000 at Anfield for the game. Our teams changed only in one sense, that Steve Hardwick's now gone in goal, and because there's an injury to Mahoney, and so it's not exactly the same team, but that's the only change. There was Graham Oates came off the bench halfway through the second half for an injury, but otherwise it was the same team apart from the goalkeeper. Liverpool, well, just feel their usual. Bob Paisley's still the manager. Ray Clements, Phil Neal, Joey Jones, Tommy Smith, Ray Kennedy, Emlyn Hughes, Kenny Dalglish, Jimmy Case, Steve Highway, and now Terry McDermott, of course, appears in the lineup, having been bought from us the couple of seasons beforehand. And Ian Callaghan, the England winger on the right. A very, very strong Liverpool team who are another one of the pundits' possible favourites to win the title. Give a good account of ourselves, but just after half time, Kenny Dalglish slots the first goal in, and then just at the death, right at the last, at 88 minutes, who would score the second one to really knock the stuffing out of, but Terry McDermott. So a 2-0 loss at Liverpool, and yes, it's a loss, but I have to say that if the set of people at the time how would you go if we thought we were going to go to 2-0 loss? I don't think it would surprise people because Liverpool were that good, and there was still some doubt about our squad and its strength and all of that sort of thing. So we're now come to another away game against Middlesbrough, and we want Borough on the best team in the world. They've made no major acquisitions during the summer, so everybody thinks, well, surely we'll get a point at this time. 28,000 at Ayson Park for our visit, and they've changed their manager. John Neal has come in to manage Middlesbrough, and the side is a strong one. Jim Platt, the Irish goalkeepers in, John Cragg's ex-Geordie, Terry Cooper, ex-Leeds, Willie Madron, Stuart Bohm, ex-Magpie, Wimbledon player, Tony McAndrew, Borough stalwart, John Mahoney, that had been with the club a while, David Mills, of course, eventually becomes a Magpie and all, and David Armstrong. Not a bad side. Our team that goes is back to the usual, because Steve Hardwick's injuries all right now, and he's back in goal. So it's Hardwick, Natras Kennedy, Cassidy, McCaffrey, Bird, Barraclough, Oates, Nicky Burns, Alan Gowland, and Tommy Craig. So it's hopeful that this away fixture might result in getting something. It's not. It's a one I was at because I have family in that part of the world, in Billingham, and they used to like it when we used to go down for a weekend. We used to make a weekend of it. My mum and dad used to go, and we all used to go and join in, and so we went. But by goodness, we were disappointed. Borough outplayed was the only way to describe it. It was only 2-0 at the end, but it could have been a lot worse. David Armstrong scored both the goals, one in 40 minutes and one in 63. And to be perfectly honest, we really were never in it as a team. It wasn't the one that ever looked like winning. Didn't even look like getting into it, to be perfectly honest. So we're now heading towards the League Cup, and we draw in the second round of the League Cup. We draw Millwall, and everybody thinks, well, Millwall at home, they're not the strongest team. In fact, they've just come out of the division below us, and well, it shouldn't be a major hurdle. So it's a Wednesday night game, 22,000 at the game, and everybody thinks, well, let's go forward for this League Cup, see if we can have another go at it. I haven't won it just a couple of seasons beforehand, but I've been in it a couple of seasons beforehand. But it wasn't to be. In 5 minutes, John Seasman scores for Millwall, and on 74 minutes, Ian Pearson scores the second. So we're losing 2-0. And again, the disquiet in the Gallagher corner, I can tell you, was huge. The huge sigh of disappointment when the second goal went in, because we were struggling to get into this game, and we just it just didn't happen. Millwall came with their managers, Gordon Jago, a lad that played his football and did all his management stuff in London with West Ham and QPR and people like that. And they had one or two old stagers from around the QPR and West Ham, like Barry Kitchener, Tony Hazel played for years for QPR, Brian Hamilton, who was made his name at Ipswich, Irish international, tidy player, and he was playing for Millwall. And Brian Chambers, who was a Geordie, managed to find his way into Millwall. And Ian Pearson, who was a left-sided player, dangerous player, who they'd acquired from Arsenal, the young player from Arsenal. He was quite dangerous. On the night, we lost, and we lost badly, and much to the discontent of the Gallagher corner, I can assure you. So we then have a home game with West Ham United in the league, and they're not doing too good. In the previous season, we'd beaten them both times, so there was an expectation that we might do it again. So we looking for West Ham to come and see if we can't put things right, get things on the right course, because we're not doing so hot. We're struggling down near the bottom of the league, 29,000 at the game, and our team unchanged. Mick Mahoney, Alan Kennedy, or Irvin Natras is injured because, and Ray Blackhall comes in at right fullback, another local lad. But otherwise, it's virtually the same team we'd played from the start of the season. And West Ham United, John Lyle's still a manager, an old player. Was still a manager. And the team was the one that people knew. Mervyn Day, good goalkeeper. Kevin Locke played for them along. Tommy Taylor, Frank Lampard Sr., Kerbishley, who got a name for himself with as a manager at one stage, particularly with Charlton. Alan Devonshire, Pat Holland, a good name in London for a long time. His son actually is part of the England training setup at the moment. If you see them all together on the touchline, you'll hear Pat Holland's name mentioned. Well, it's the son of this Pat Holland, Alan Taylor, and of course in the forward line, Pop Robson, who they'd bought from us, and Billy Jennings, a dangerous left-sided player who they'd also bought from Ipswich. Entertaining game, but not if you're a Newcastle fan. We got off to a really bright start. 8 minutes, Mickey Burns scores. Tommy Cassidy makes it 2-0 on 22 minutes. And then we just fall apart. Billy Jennings scores on 37, just after half time. Alan Taylor makes it 2-2. And would you believe it, 88 minutes, West Ham get a winner. And who scores it? But
Pop Robson.
Absolutely. You could have put your mortgage on it. It was that if they were going to score, that's who would do it. So anyway, we'll still have another match, and you're starting to feel a disquiet in the Gallagher corner, because they can see we're really just bumping along the bottom of the league now. And because this is Newcastle, what do? We'll have a friendly. And a Tuesday night after that defeat to West Ham, we go to Hibernian for a friendly.
Unbelievable.
And it just 6,000 at the game. But worse than that, we managed to lose to Hibernian 3-0, and that's not good. I mean, they really did take you apart, and it's not what you needed when you're struggling in your own league. Anyway, we have to press on and come home on the Saturday for a home game against West Bromwich Albion, and we always an attractive team in my view, West Brom, and we have some really really good games with them. They're 28,000 at the game, so the crowd's still keeping faith with the Dennis's team. Mick Mahoney's in. He brings David Craig in at right back instead of Natras. Alan Kennedy. Ray Blackhall shifts across into midfield, defensive midfield. John Bird and Irvin Natras has played in midfield as well instead of fullback. The forward line is Barraclough, Cannell, Mickey Burns, Alan Gowland, and Tommy Craig, which is what we've had before. West Brom come with their usual team of good footballers. They're now managed by the ex-England centre forward Ronnie Allen, very attractive player, Ronnie Allen, and they've got Tony Godden in goal. They got from West Ham. Alistair Robertson was theirs. John Weil is theirs. Paddy Mulligan, who they've got from Birmingham. Derek Statham, who's been with them for quite a lot of time. Len Cantello, who come from London from West Ham. And another Brian Robson, of course, who they got from Middlesbrough, who ended up playing for Manchester United and for England for so many years. Cyril Regis, centre forward, they bought from West Ham. Tony Brown, who's a dangerous forward of their own making of some years. and Laurie Cunningham, who was a very dangerous West Indian winger, and on the other side, Willie Johnson, a Scots winger, who was a terrific player. Interestingly, Laurie Cunningham was injured midway through the second half and was replaced by the West Brom substitute, who happened to be a man called Mick Martin, who eventually was to become a Magpie, of course, and be a very, very popular Magpie. The score, though, wasn't entertaining. Cyril Regis scored on 8 minutes, Laurie Cunningham on 16, and just to rub it in, the only Geordie in the team, Brian Robson, scored the third on 80 minutes, and that was another desperate loss. And by now, the disquiet in the Gallagher corner turned to some booing and slow hand clapping in the Gallagher corner, and it's not surprising, because we're now, after that loss, not only we're losing heavily, and the goal difference is looking like a cricket score, but never mind. So Wednesday night, 14th of September, our first round of the UEFA Cup, and we played Bohemians from the Irish League, and there it is, and it's excitement, lots of excitement, and rightly so. And just to confirm the excitement, 26,000 turn up for this game, which is it's away at Bohemians in Ireland, and still get 26,000 at the game. And Dallymount Park is their ground, and they're managed by Billy Young, ex-Irish international, and the team has one or two people who played in the Premier League, John McCormick, Frank O'Brien, Tommy Kelly, Niall Sheffy, who played a lot in London, Pat Byrne, who played for West Ham, Jerry Ryan, who played for one of the Manchester teams for a while, and Eddie Byrne, who played left-sided forward, who played for West Ham as well. So that they were expecting a tough game, because they weren't going to give it away easy, and that's exactly what happened. Our team was Mick Mahoney, John Bird, David Craig, Alan Kennedy of Anatris, and Ralph Canahan, who and that's them shaking hands at the end. Ralph Callahan, who Dennis had bought into the club. Tommy Cassidy, Tommy Craig, Stuart Barrowclough, Mickey Burns, and Paul Cannell. Dennis had made himself not entirely popular the way things were going. It ended up 0-0. It was a 0-0 draw, pretty miserable draw. As Dennis started to make himself unpopular, not just on the field but off the field, because there were noises like he was looking to sell people like Alan Gowland, who was a centre forward stroke striker. You know, he could play in any of the three striking roles. Anyway, we came back to England for the Saturday game was away to Birmingham City. So everybody's hoping, for goodness sake, we get something out of this one. The Birmingham aren't tearing up trees either. They're not 19,000 at the game, and Birmingham now managed by Sir Alf Ramsey, the ex-England manager, the World Cup winning manager, and in goal, Jimmy Montgomery, ex-Mackham goalkeeper, and Pat Howard's in the back line, and Kevin Broadhurst, the boat and Malcolm Page, the boat from Villa and West Brom, and Gary Emanuel, the brought up from London. And then in a forward line, Terry Hibbert appears, who they bought from us a couple of seasons beforehand, or the season beforehand. And then on the left side of the forward line, Trevor Francis, the star winger, and Keith Birchin, the bought from Coventry, to bolster the lineup. Now, the season before, we just took Birmingham apart. Well, it wasn't going to be like that this time. And our team was unchanged. Mahoney, Craig, Kennedy, McLean, Bird, Natras, Barraclough, Cannell, Burns, Ralph Callaghan, Tommy Craig. And we weren't at the races with this game. We got beat 3-0, and it could have been double that without any stretch of the imagination. That's how poor we were playing at this particular time. And to say that was disappointing was putting it mildly, because now we're really struggling to get off the bottom of the league, never mind do anything in the league. So we've got some work to do already. And as I say, there's a great deal of disquiet, not just in the Gallagher corner now, but around the ground generally. People begin to think, well, this is not great. So we then have a home match against Coventry City, and people's hoping above hopes that we'll start to put things right on the field, particularly in the league. It's all right being in all these cups, but the first divisions were priority. And here we are playing Coventry City, and usually a team that we would beat. It was hopeful that we would. Got a bit of a fright, of course. Ian Wallace put Coventry ahead on 37 minutes, but Alan Gowland levels it up on 41 minutes, and everybody thinks, oh well, second half we'll get at them and have a go at it. But it didn't work like that. I mean, same team: Mahoney, Craig, Kennedy, McLean, Caffrey, Natras, Barraclough, Ralph Callaghan, Burns, Alan Gowland, Tommy Craig, and Coventry with their manager Gordon Millen, who was ex-Liverpool player and England player, as their manager. And it was a Coventry side that had very few real stars. John Beck, who they'd bought from West Ham, Terry Yorith, who they'd bought from Leeds, Tommy Hutchison, they bought from Manchester City, Ray Graydon, who made quite a name for himself as a manager. In fact, for a short while, managed the club not too far from us, and Ian Wallace and Michael Ferguson. Not the best Coventry side yet. They beat us 2-1, and that, as I say, that wasn't just upsetting the Gallagher corner. They all around the ground you could hear the boos and the slow hand claps and all the rest of it. So we now move on to the Wednesday of that week, and we've got a return match with Bohemians in the UEFA Cup, and everybody's hoping above hope that we'll make some progress in this game, this cup, and they don't let us down. They play particularly well. 20,000 in the crowd. 20,000 in the crowd, and that reflects really of how badly we're playing in the league rather than how we're playing in this UEFA Cup against Bohemians. Our teams unaltered: Mahoney, Natras, Craig, McCaffrey, Kennedy, Barraclough, Callaghan, Tommy Craig, Alan Gowland and Mickey Burns. The Bohemians, exactly the same team that played us in Ireland. And the difference was this time that we got off to a reasonable start. Alan Gowland scored in 27 minutes, and they never looked like getting near a goal. And in the middle of the second half, we just went bananas. 65 minutes, Tommy Craig scored. 68 minutes, Alan Gowland scored. 69 minutes, Tommy Craig scored another one. So we beat them 4-0 and advanced into the next round of the UEFA Cup. And at least there's some palpable size of relief that we actually look like we're winning a game, which was expected, but nonetheless, it was still a relief for being played so badly. So after that UEFA Cup match, we've got an away game at Ipswich, and off we go to Ipswich Town, which again they're not as a danger as they used to be when they were being touted for winning the title. So we go to Ipswich. Their manager's still Bobby Robson. The team's quite a decent team, though. They've got a number of current England internationals in that team: Mick Mills, Kevin Beattie, Brian Talbot, Clive Woods, Trevor Wymark. Occasionally he got a couple of games. And then a little fellow they bought from, eventually became a Mackham, Eric Gates, who was a thorn in our side for a while, and Paul Maronet, very dangerous England centre forward. So they weren't a bad side, Ipswich, but we still thought from past seasons' performance, we should get something out of the game with 22,000 there. It was a decent game, and we got off to a great start. Aidan McCaffrey scored from a corner, set up, but then Mick Mills with a free kick, 28 minutes, equalised. And then on 70 minutes, the little man, Eric Gates, sneaked in and got a winner. Our side was unchanged from what played against Bohemians, and but it wasn't good enough to overturn Ipswich. So we're now back sweating again as to where we're going to end up in this league, because we're not looking very, very comfortable, to put it mildly. And we then come back from Ipswich. We have we don't come back at all. We stay in East Anglia, and on the Wednesday, yes, I remember that this actually stayed down because they stayed in East Anglia. On a Wednesday, we played Norwich City, and Norwich City weren't doing very well at all, and there was hope that this would be this was winnable, I think is how I would say it these days. Unfortunately, winnable or not, with only 17,000 in the ground, our team was unchanged. You know, Mahoney, Craig, Kennedy, McLean, McCaffrey, Natras, Barraclough, Callahan, Burns, Alan Gowland, and Tommy Craig. And Norwich, decent side. Kevin Keelan was a well-known goalkeeper at the time. Kevin Bond, the West Ham centre-half, ex-West Ham centre-half. Roger Gribbins and Martin Peters, Martin Peters, of course, the ex-World Cup man who they bought from West Ham with Gribbins, and Colin Suggett, who we knew as the Magpie and played for our neighbours for a good while as well. So he well-known Colin in the Northeast, and Jimmy Neighbour, who they just bought from Spurs, and Kevin Reeves, and Norwich. We got off to a flyer. Tommy Craig, 10 minutes, scored for us. And Martin Peters on 22 minutes. And then on 66 minutes, Reeves scored the winner for Norwich. So another game which everybody thought was winnable, now down the pan, which is... and we're now fighting for bottom place. We're vying for bottom place, which is quite worrying, to put it mildly. We now got an away game at Manchester United. Now, any time of the year going to Manchester United's a difficult one, and bearing in mind the way we're playing at the moment, and Manchester are really up at the top, banging for the lead, the top of the. No, sorry, I've jumped the game. we had a home game against Derby before we went to Manchester. Sorry, on the Saturday, in October, we had a home game against Derby County, and everybody hopes that this will give us a chance to turn things around. Well, hope's a funny thing when a Newcastle fan, because it doesn't work like that. Derby beat with 2-1. Billy Hughes 46 minutes and Roy McParland on 75 minutes. And just before the final whistle, Mickey Burns gets a consolation for us. Our team's unchanged. Mahoney, Natras, etc., all the way down to Tommy Craig on the left and Alan Gowland up the middle. Derby County have now changed managers again, and have just got Tommy Docherty from Manchester United. And they have quite a decent side. Peter Daniel, Welsh international fullback. David Nish, they've just bought from Leicester. Roy McFarland. Steve Powell. Kevin Hector, one of their own at the minute. Jerry Daly, that they've just bought across from Coventry. Terry Ryan. Billy Hughes, who was an ex-Mackham, of course. And Charlie George, who they'd got from Arsenal. A dangerous attacker. Clever player, Charlie George. Well, they were just too much for her. As I say, 2-1, and it was one of those games, and I remember it quite well because Derby has links with my family, and some of the family came up to see the game, and it was not a happy occasion. 27,000 there, and at the end of the match, the 27,000 let Richard Dennis know what they thought about what was happening at Newcastle United. And then, as if that wasn't bad enough, of course, our next match, as I indicated, was an away game to Manchester United at Old Trafford. And it was never an easy place to go to. I've had some good results. There's 57,000 at this game. But that's because Manchester are pushing for the top of the league. And our team is virtually, changing the goalkeeper because Mahoney was injured and Steve Hardwick came in. Otherwise, the team was unchanged. Alan Gowland was injured and Paul Connell came in instead of Gowland. And so, it wasn't a bad team, but it wasn't a very strong team either. And Dave Sexton is now manager of Manchester United, having been pinched from West Ham. Alex Stepney in goal, Jimmy Nicholl, Arthur Albuston, Stuart Houston, Scottish fullback, Martin Buchan, Scottish midfielder, Sammy McElroy, top Irish player, Chris McGrath, top Irish player, Jimmy Greenhoff, England international, Lou McCarry, who still knocking around in football, associated with various clubs, and I think he's still involved with Swindon. Actually, seen something about him on the telly the other day where he'd opened a charitable thing to help homeless people around the area. Steve Coppell, a dangerous winger, and Gordon Hill, a dangerous left-sided forward as well. So that's the two teams, and it looked like we're going to get thrashed. Coppell 8 minutes, Greenhoff 23, Lou McCarry 51, and everybody thought, God, how is this going to be a cricket score? Well, the young substitute called Dennis Martin came on and scored in 73. And then Mickey Burns scored on 88. And for the last 5 minutes or so, we were actually given Manchester United a game, which was good. But unfortunately, we didn't get anything out of it. So another loss, a 3-2 loss, which really does plant firmly at the wrong end of the league. We're not going anywhere with this particular team. So we're now looking to the next round of the UEFA Cup, and playing Bastia from Italy. and the first leg is away, well, there's hope that we might make progress in this trophy as long as we don't get beaten too much. Because bear in mind the away goals count in this trophy. That's the two captains shaking up. Our team's unchanged. You know, Steve Hardwick, Peter Kelly, Aidan McCaffrey, Irvin Natras, Tommy Cassidy, Tommy Craig, Jeff Nutley, Stuart Barraclough, Mickey Burns, Paul Cannell, and Alan Gowland. And it's a change to see some action photographs, because sometimes they're harder to find than hen's teeth. But for some reason, this Bastia game, there was lots of additional photographs, which is why I've included them today. The Italian Bastia were managed by Pierre Corderus, who was an old Italian international. They had a Dutch goalkeeper called Mark Weller, and then the rest of the team, there were one or two Italian internationals, but tend to be people on their way out, like Casazas, Papi, Johnny Rep, who was a Dutch player who they brought into their ranks, and Francois Feltz, who was a French international. So they were a decent team, and they got a fright. Paul Cannell headed win the lead in 7 minutes, and then sadly on 50 minutes they equalised for Papi, and just to rub it in, Papi just before the end scored the second goal to give Bastia a 2-1 win. But what wasn't regarded at home as a disaster, because they know the away legs to come and how the goals count double. Away goals count double. So as I say, we lost, but not a complete disaster. So we now come home to a home game against Chelsea, and this Chelsea team always difficult to beat, and again they're another one like other London clubs who are being touted as possible league champions, and 24,000 at the game, which isn't a big crowd, but teams the same: Hardwick, Kelly, Natras, Cassidy, McCaffrey, Nutley, Barraclough, Cannell, Burns, Alan Gowland's back from injury, and Tommy Craig. Now, the Chelsea team is Peter Bonetti, Graham Wilkins, Mickey Droy, Steve Wicks, Ron Harris, Bomber Harris, as they call him, Ian Britton, Ray Wilkins, who played for England for years and became quite a noted manager for a while, William Garner, Tommy Langley, and Clive Walker. A good Chelsea team with a good smattering of internationals, but Newcastle played well on the day, and this particular Saturday, and thanks to a 2-minute goal by Mickey Burns, we went 1-0 in the lead, and that's where it stayed. And quite end-to-end stuff. Chelsea trying hard, and we trying hard to keep them out. So we got a victory. And as I say, that this, because of the situation we're in the league, there's a huge sigh of relief as in the Gallagher corner and around the ground. So we now go to Everton and do a away match at Everton, and not the happiest of hunting grounds for, but we've had some good results there, and hoping for one here. 38,000 at the game at Goodison Park, and it's got a bit of space to it because who are Everton managed by, but none other than our previous manager, Gordon Lee. They're a strong side. Wood in goals, international, Davy Jones, Welsh international, Mark Higgins international. Mike Peerich, Mickey Lyons, Bruce Rioch, Scottish international Andy King, Martin Dobson, Bob Latchford, a good centre forward, Jim Pearson, Scottish international, and Dave Thomas, an England winger. So a strong Everton side, and we go with our unchanged team except the goalkeeper's Hardwick because Mahoney's injured, and we go, and it's a ding dong game. It's 6 minutes. Everton score. 11 minutes. Tommy Craig equalises. 44 minutes. Alan Gowland puts with 2-1 in lead. 55 minutes. Bob Latchford scores. 57 minutes. Tommy Cassidy scores. 70 minutes. Latchford scores for them. And then 82 minutes. Mick Lyons scores, and it looks like we've had it. But a minute after that, Alan Gowland scores his second, and it becomes 4-4. And a very entertaining game and a hard-fought draw, which is a point people didn't expect. I've got to say, there's no question about that. So we now come back to Tyneside because we've got the second leg of the European match to play against Bastia, and everybody's hoping that this will send us to the next round. Well, that's what we're hoping anyway. But when we get there, unfortunately, on the night, Bastia bring the A game, put it mildly. Within 3 minutes, they're in the lead. And a Dutch international, Johnny Rep, on 9 minutes makes it 2-0. Alan Gowland scores one on 36 to give us some hope. And on 67, Johnny Rep scores another one just to seal the victory for Bastia. And the reality is that they outplayed us, and we never looked like we'd get anything out of this game. So that's our adventure into the UEFA Cup. Well and truly knocked the stuffing out of us. Where people had been prepared to forgive and forget because of good results, there really was a thoroughly difficult game at the end for Richard Dennis, because they Dennis out and Boone and all the rest of it, and slow hand clap was the least of his worries. And there were lots of stuff in the press, fairly uncomplimentary stuff from directors and as well as supporters and so on. Next game is a home game against Bristol City, and if we're going to get out of this position on the bottom of the league, these are games we need to win. So Bristol come, and a reasonable game, and they play quite well. Dennis Martin scores on 74 minutes. We think, well, that's it. We're going to get a 1-0 win. But Donald Gillies is Bristol centre forward, scores an equaliser on 79 minutes, and that's where it ends 1-1. So if people were upset before, 24,000 at the game, this draw didn't do anything to appease them at all. Bristol City had one or two ex-First Division players like Norman Hunter from Leeds, Gerald Gow from Manchester United, Tommy Ritchie from Manchester City, and Kevin Mabbott from Spurs. It had a decent enough team, but it shouldn't have been a team that bothered us. And the draw certainly didn't go anywhere to placating the fans. And Dennis was lampooned in the press, really given a hard time. And then the inevitable came in the middle of the week. He was gone. He was sacked. And everybody wondered who they were going to replace. Well, Lord Westwood used his contacts in the FA, and one of the senior people of the FA was Sir Stanley Rouse, who was the former president. And he told Westwood that there was a top England manager in Saudi Arabia looking to come home. And why didn't he have a talk to him? And that top England manager was Bill McGarry. And Bill McGarry came to Newcastle United. That's him, yes. And with a reputation, you just need to look at what former players say about him. Where Dennis was regarded as a school teacher, they'd put the iron hand, not just the iron hand, the iron fist into the dressing room with Bill McGarry. It must have been frightened some of them to death, because he was a different character altogether. So now we've got an away game with Wolves to face with the new manager, and everybody's hoping that we might get something out of the game. With and even in those days, there was the view that the new manager Bounce would do something forward. Well, irony, of course, is that Bill McGarry's first game for us is Wolves, and it's not too long before he's actually managing Wolves. He doesn't make many changes to Dennis's team. Steve Hardwick, David Craig, Mickey Barker as a new addition from the juniors. Tommy Cassidy, John Bird, Irvin Natras, Stuart Barracliff, Dennis Martin, Mickey Burns, Tommy Craig, and Nigel Walker is somebody who Dennis bought but never played, and yet here's the new manager sticking him straight into the team to go to Wolves. 17,000 at Molineux to see we're there, and it's not the best game in the world. 6 minutes were a goal down, and that's the way it stays for the rest of the match. We're completely just not in it. They could have played all day, and we wouldn't have scored. Wolves manager at this particular time was a man called Sammy Chung, obviously with a name like that of Chinese extract, but he was a great player for Stoke City, an international player, and played for England a couple of times. Wolves had one or two star names. Willie Carr that we got from Coventry, a dangerous midfielder, Derek Park, and Kenny Hibbert, of course, who was the brother of our Terry Hibbert, who used to play for us, who is now at Birmingham. Steve Daly that they got from Birmingham. John Richards was the dangerous centre forward. Norman Bell, who they got from Manchester City. And the Wolves were a decent side. They certainly weren't hovering around the bottom like we were, but nonetheless they took the victory 1-0 and kind of cemented us at the bottom of the league. The next game on the 19th of May was against Arsenal at home, and this is not going to be easy. We know this. Arsenal are a good side, and as I said earlier, one of the teams that the pundits in the south are thinking might be up for the title, and 24,000 at the game. And McGarry sticks to his team. Hardwick, Craig, David Craig, Mickey Barker, Cassidy, Bird, Natras, Barraclough, Mickey Burns. He brings Alan Gowland in, who'd been injured, and Tommy Craig. And Arsenal, well, Terry Neal's the manager, big Irish centre half back, gained something of a reputation with Arsenal and with Tottenham, but then disappeared from the game. And I've never even, I don't know where he went after that, but he certainly didn't stick around too long. Arsenal by now had bought Pat Jennings in goal from Tottenham, had Willie Young and Pat Rice at fullback. David O'Leary, big Irish centre half, Alan Hudson, another import from Chelsea. Liam Brady, Irish midfielder. Graham Ricks, who was to become an England international. Alan Sunderland, who was a dangerous wide man, who went to Southampton and won the FA Cup for Southampton later in his career. And Frank Stapleton, a big bustling centre forward. And we started the game quite well. Tommy Gassity put in the lead on 46 minutes, and everybody thought, well, we'll hang on here, we'll get a couple of points out of this game. Well, unfortunately, Frank Stapleton scored on 51 minutes, and then Alan Sunderland on 75 made it 2-1. And once it got to that, we were lost. We just didn't come back at all against this Arsenal side. So then we have to face another home game, and it's a game against Leicester City. Now, Leicester City had been playing well, but like us this year, they're not playing well, and they're one of the teams that's bumping along the bottom of the league with us. And with crowd reflects what's happening on the pitch, of course, now down to 20,000 at the ground. And but McGarry sticks by his team. Hardwick, Natras, Barker, Cassidy, Bird. It brings in John Blackley, the Scots midfielder, Dennis Martin, Mickey Burns, Tommy Craig, and a young lad, Stuart Robinson, who's been brought in from the reserves. And Alan Gowland's injured, of course. Leicester City, good side, but not playing very well at this current time. Jeff Blockley was the star defender. Dennis Roth, the bought from London. David Webb, the bought from Chelsea. Steve Kember, they paid a lot of money to Crystal Palace for. Keith Weller from Tottenham, and Alan Waddle, who they took from Liverpool. And while everybody was expecting a win, first half was hard work, 0-0, very, very, very tough to watch. Actually, it was so boring. But then in 59 minutes, Mickey Burns got the first goal, and that livened Newcastle up. And we set about them, and Irvin Natras on 88 minutes got the second. So we got a 2-0 win, which, much to the relief of the Gallagher corner and elsewhere in the ground, actually did lift off the bottom of the league. To have lost this one would have been an absolute disaster. However, we lost. We won 2-0, and it just took us off the bottom of the league, and there was, as I say, relief all around the ground. So we now have to face an away game after Leicester to QPR, and it's quite a happy hunting ground for Newcastle. But the way we're playing this season, it could be a difficult one. So 16,000 in Loftus Road for this game, and everybody's hopeful we might get at least a point. Well, their hopes are fulfilled in a sense. The first half 0-0 and pretty dour. Second half, Newcastle perk up a bit, and the young Rad Robinson that Bill McGarry's brought into the team scores on 63 minutes, and that separates the teams right to the end. And we get a 1-0 win, a win that we weren't expecting. QPR's manager, Frank Sibley, an old player of theirs, and they have some players who are well known: Don Shanks, David Needham, Gillard, Leighton James, who they got from Burnley, John Hollins from Chelsea, Jerry Francis, of course, who became very, very famous, to Don Givens, a flying winger, and of course also Stan Bowles, the mercurial midfielder who could do all sorts of things with the ball, but sadly is more remembered for the tricks he used to play in the betting shop rather than he played on the football field. That's another win for us, 1-0, which is really, really brightened things up forward. Lifted things quite a bit. So we're now heading home and looking for keep this going, to see if it can keep her off the bottom of the league. And the next game's Wolves. Wolves by this time aren't playing that much better than we are. They're in the mix at the bottom of the league, so it would be a good one to win. The couple of wins we've had perks the crowd up a little bit. We're 22,000, which still isn't huge, but we set about Wolves in fine fashion. In 16 minutes, we've got a goal from Irvin Natris. Kenny Mitchell scores on 35. And then after half time, Tommy Craig on 57. And then Tommy Cassidy on 62. And we're 4-0 up. And it was... say we're coasting's putting it mildly. Wolves were never in the game. Never in the game, really. New goalkeeper from Bill McGarry, Kevin Carr, who became a stalwart for Newcastle, a well-known local lad, ex-policeman, well liked in the tune. Carr, Natras, Barker, Cassidy, Bird, John Blackley, the Scotsman, Dennis Martin, Mickey Burns, Kenny Mitchell, another junior, who was from the reserves, brought in by McGarry, Tommy Craig, and Stuart Robinson. Now, remember this particularly match. Young Robinson, although he's not on the score sheet, he was the star of the game, actually. He tormented Wolves throughout most of the match and looked like a real prospect. And Wolves, with still their manager, Sammy Chung, with the Chinese background, the full team, Derek Parkland, Jeff Palmer, Steve Daly, Kenny Hibbert, Willie Carr, John Richards, and Mervyn Eves. But they were never in this match. The Wolves were never going to upset Newcastle and that. And to have three wins on the trot meant that it made the league table look at least a little more palatable, and was giving McGarry some leeway with the fans, of course, because of the losses that kept coming. He would start to have the sort of difficulties that Dennis had. So we get rid of Wolves, and then we face a trip to Manchester City, and another. It's an unusual program with the Christmas tree on. It's quite nice. The only trouble is that it looks like it's a Christmas tree with lots of presents on. Well, sadly for us, there was lots of presents from Manchester City because the beat were falling out. Really took it to the cleaners. I mean, we weren't even in the game. It was such a defeat. 49,000 at the game, and of course Manchester with Tony Book, their manager, Joe Corrigan, Kenny Clements, Willie Donahue, Tommy Booth, Dave Watson, who ended up at our neighbours, Mackham's, Paul Power, Gary Owen, Asa Hartford, Peter Barnes, Brian Kidd, and Dennis Stewart. Very strong team, and they were on form that day. Our team was unchanged: Kevin Carr, Natras, Barker, Cassidy, Bird, Blackley, Martin, Burns, Cannell, Tommy Craig, and Stuart Robinson. The truth is, we weren't even in the game. We managed to get to half time with 0-0, but more by good luck than good management. But once the first one went in from Brian Kidd on 50 minutes, and then wouldn't you expect a hat trick from somebody who tormented with both on West side and at Manchester City, Dennis Stewart, hat trick, and 70 minutes, 77 minutes, and 84 minutes. And that was a 4-0 thrashing. It could have been a lot. It could have been a tennis score if Manchester City had actually taken all their chances. However, we come home and have a home match against Nottingham Forest, and they're not doing too well either. We think, well, they're one of a group of teams like ourselves that spent most of the season bumping along the bottom, and everybody hopes that this will give us some respite, maybe keep off the bottom ourselves, but it wasn't to be. I'm afraid and the pity is 41,000 at the game, and that's a traditional Christmas crowd at Newcastle. 28th of December this is, and a big crowd, and everybody's expectations, well, the expectations were dashed. David Needham goes 17 minutes. John McGovern and NX Mackham on 80 minutes scored the second one, and Nottingham Forest went out 2-0 winners. I think the disappointing thing for me was that once we went a goal down, we were never going to get back in it. Forest were just too strong at the back. Peter Shilton was at Forest by now as their goalkeeper. Clough was the manager. David Needham, Barrett, Kenny Burns, who Clough had bought from Birmingham, and Viv Anderson, fullback from Arsenal. John McGivern, midfielder from the Mackhams. John Robertson, a big bustling winger from Celtic. Martin O'Neill, who has become quite a famous manager. Archie Gemmell, who they got from Derby, and Tony Woodcock, who they got from Derby as well. And centre forward, none other than Peter With, who used to be our centre forward, and he ended up playing for Forest. Forest were just too good for us. They scored on 17 minutes, and then John McGovern scored on 80 minutes. 2-0, and it could have been worse. It could have been worse. But the problem for Bill McGarry now is that he's having to live up to the history that was left by Dennis. The crowd's now getting very, very upset again, and they want things to change, but they know that the next match is going to be tough to change because it's Liverpool. So we're playing Liverpool at home, and we get good first half. I remember this game was very, very even in the first half, end-to-end stuff. But just after half time, Phil Thompson scored a free kick on 48 minutes. And then right towards the end, 89 minutes, Kenny Dalglish made it 2-0 to give Liverpool the victory. Our team, unchanged from Bill McGarry, Carr, Natras, Barker, or Ray Hudson came in, McCaffrey, Ray Blackhall, Stuart Barrett-Clough, Mickey Burns, Scots lad Mike Larnick that Dennis had bought, would never played him. McGarry puts him in the team, Tommy Craig and Stuart Robinson. Liverpool managed by Bob Paisley now. Ray Clements, Phil Neal, Joey Jones, Phil Thompson, Ray Kennedy, Emlyn Hughes, Kenny Dalglish, Terry McDermott, Steve Highway, David Fairclough and Ian Callaghan. I think, as I mentioned before, David Fairclough, the original super sub. Liverpool got into the position that when they were losing matches, they used to throw David Fairclough on. He was a big lad, and quite often he used to get them an equaliser or even a winner, and very quickly became known as the super sub. 2-0, and we never looked like we were going to challenge Liverpool in any major respect. And of course, by now, relegation bells are ringing loud and clear, not just in the Gallagher corner, around the rest of the ground as well. So we have an away game to face at Leeds United, which is never a good place to go at any time. But when you're sitting near the bottom of the league, it's definitely not the best place to be going. So here we go to Leeds, and we 37,000 crowd, and Leeds now are are pushing for the top of the league, and here are we pushing for the bottom of the league. And McGarry takes the same team: Carr, Blackhall, Barker, Cassidy, McCaffrey, Stuart Barraclough, Ray Hudson, Mickey Burns, Mike Larner. Mark McGee's bought down from Scotland is in the team, and Tommy Craig. And Leeds, team of all-stars: Stuart, Madley, McQueen, Gray, Cherry, Carl Harris, Flynn, Brian Flynn, they brought from Burnley, Tony Curry, Peter Lorimer, Joe Jordan from Manchester United, and Arthur Graham. Every one of those players international for England, Ireland, or Wales, or Scotland. Well, everybody's got holding with bated breath. Well, typical Newcastle, big surprise, 42 minutes just before half-time, Mickey Burns slots one in. And then it's backs to the wall. Leeds really give us a pummeling. And then on 88 minutes, Mickey Burns again, just to rub it in, gets the second goal, and we beat Leeds 2-0 at Leeds. Not what anybody expected, to be frank, going to Leeds with the record that we had. But at least that win temporarily got we off the bottom of the bottom of the league. And so we're now looking at the FA Cup, and we have the FA Cup third round match at Peterborough United, and we an away game and at Peterborough. It's winnable, everybody thinks. Peterborough, the new kids on the block, just coming into the league, having been voted into the league instead of Gateshead, but they were still finding their feet with their ground. Highbury, they try to model themselves on Arsenal to the point where the pitch at Peterborough is London Road, is exactly the same size as the pitch at Arsenal, or was at Arsenal before Arsenal got their new ground. They were trying to model themselves on Arsenal, and good luck to them. It did them a lot of good, but didn't do poor Gateshead any good, I have to say. John Barnwell was their manager. John Barnwell, who played for Nottingham Forest. Geordie from Seaton Delaval. The goalkeeper at Peterborough was Jim Barron, and another Geordie, Chris Turner. Bobby Doyle, they got from Manchester. Lyndon Hughes from Cardiff. Alan Slough, who came from Arsenal. Tommy Robson, who was a Geordie from Hebburn, played for Newcastle, Northampton, came to Newcastle. And Billy McEwen, a Scottish forward who played, was on his way down from, I think, Rangers he came from, but a dangerous player just the same. McGarry sent our strongest team, our first team: Carr, Blackhall, Barker, Cassidy, McCaffrey, Natris, Ray Hudson, Mickey Burns, Kenny Mitchell, Alan Gowland, and Tommy Craig. And everybody's hoping that we might get a win out of this. And 20 minutes, Ray Hudson, of all people, slots in a nice goal. And we think, well, 1-1, we're going to get a 1-0 here. However, no such luck. 88 minutes, the equaliser goes in, and so we have a repainted face with Peterborough United. And in order to get it out of the way, they play it straight away on the following Wednesday night. So we have Peterborough at home on the Wednesday night for this cup replay. It's the cup's a relief from the problems we've got in the league, and I think that's reflected in the crowd, with a crowd of nearly 28,000, which is well up on the league crowds. Teams unchanged from the first game. Ray Hudson's still in the team, but halfway through the second half gets injured, and Stuart Barraclough comes on, and Alan Gowland's slotted in his injuries cleared up. So Peterborough come, same team as played in the previous game. John Barnwell doesn't change a single player, and so we're looking for hopefully for a win. Well, first half's pretty dour, 0-0, and people starting to bite their nails in the Gallagher corner. I know that. But on 47 minutes, we get a penalty and Tommy Craig slots that away. Then on 85 minutes, Ray Blackhall scores from a free kick. So we get through with the cup with a 2-0 win. Much to the relief of everybody in the ground, and as I say, particularly in the Gallagher corner from my point of view, because it's taken the misery out of what's happening to it in the league, because we're having a dreadful time in the league and just above bottom. So we now got a home game against our near neighbours, Middlesbrough, and everybody thinks, well, they're not doing so well either. Surely we'll get something out of them. Thanks to the cup win, the crowd recovers a little bit. 34,500 at St James's for Middlesbrough's visit. Our team unchanged: Carr, Blackhall, Barker, Cassidy, McCaffrey, Natras, Hudson, Burns, Natras, Gowland, Tommy Craig. Middlesbrough with John Neal as their manager now, with Jim Platt, John Craggs, ex-Magpie, Alan Ramage, Ian Bailey, Billy Ashcroft, Stuart Bohm, ex-Magpie, Tony McAndrew, John Mahoney, David Mills, Stan Cummins, a new midfielder that they introduced from the junior ranks. It turns out to be a start. Stan Cummins was a really talented player, and was to become not just a big force with them, but also with our other neighbours down the road during his career. We think that everything's going fine. Tommy Cassidy scores on 18 minutes. 34 minutes, Stuart Bohm, of course, an ex-Magpie, gets the equaliser. And then Billy Ashcroft scores two in quick succession, 58 and 61 minutes, to put the Borough 3-1 in lead. Mark McGee scores and makes it 3-2. And Stan Cummins, just to re-emphasise how dangerous he was, on 80 minutes makes it 4-2, which is goes down like a lead balloon. I mean, to lose is bad enough, but now losing to we're near neighbours who aren't playing really much better than we are at the time, and we end up with a 4-2 loss at home, with a big crowd, a relatively big crowd compared to what it had been, and to say people are unhappy is in the Gallagher corners, putting it mildly. So we're now away to West Ham United in the league. We're fingers crossed that we might get something out of this. We've done well at West Ham in the past, but not this time. It's a 26,000 at Upton Park. Usual West Ham team with Frank Lampard Senior, Billy Bonds, Kirbishley, Devonshire, Pike, David Cross, who they bought from Leicester, Alan Taylor, and Derek Hales, a tricky winger that they brought in as well. Still an attractive football team. Bill McGarry sends an unchanged team to West Ham, but unchanged or not, it doesn't bring away any luck, because within 10 minutes, their new winger Hales has scored and put them in the lead. And then after that, we're never really in the game, and it just fizzles out to a miserable 1-0 defeat, which all right for West Ham, but not entirely for us. We now come to the fourth round of the FA Cup, and we're at home to Wrexham. Well, you know, everybody thinks, well, Wrexham's beatable. Surely this is a game we should make progress in, and we 29,000 at the game, not a bad crowd, especially as we're not playing very well. And Bill McGarry messes about with the team a little bit, though. Nick Mahoney, Blackhall, Barker, Natras, Bird, John Blackley, Stuart Barrowclough, Mickey Burns, Mark McGee, Alan Kennedy, who's normally left back, is now on the left side of attack, and Alan Gowland, of course, up front. Well, Kennedy's quick enough to be a winger as well as a fullback, so be interesting how he fares. Well, he's causes them all sorts of trouble at first, but we have to wait until 56 minutes before we score, and then Dixie McNeil for Wrexham equalises on 58, and then Ray Blackhall scores a free kick on 66, and everybody thinks that's it, 2-1, we're home. That last kick of the game, there's Dixie McNeil again, equalises 2-2, well, 2-2 against Wrexham was not go down well with the Gallagher corner or anywhere else in the ground for a game that was we thought we really should have won, but we didn't play like we should have won. That's the problem. The next game, of course, is the replay on the Monday night at Wrexham, and everybody thinks, well, come on, you know, surely roll your sleeves up. Wrexham aren't unbeatable, surely, even on their own pitch. You know, we should be able to have a go at them. Well, we go down to this Dixie McNeil again in 2 minutes. Mickey Burns equalises on 38. Bobby Simpson makes it 2-1 to them, and then Len Cartwright makes it 3-1, and right on the death, this Dixie McNeil makes it 4-1. So not only do we not get a win at Wrexham, we get well and truly slaughtered off a team which our team's unchanged. It's Mahoney, Blackhall, Barker, and he keeps Kennedy at outside left, but didn't do any good. The Wrexham team, which managed by Mel Sutton, the ex-Welsh international player, has one of mostly Welsh nationals who are on their way out: Alan Hill, Alan Dwyer, Gareth Davis, John Roberts, Mickey Thomas, Mickey Thomas, as he became known, stayed with Wrexham a long time and eventually became their manager. Bobby Shinton, who became well known, but they got him from Spurs. Mel Sutton, who of course was their manager as well, player manager. Dixie McNeil, who I talked about, and Len Cartwright, a tricky winger. They just once they got their noses in front, we weren't in it. Wrexham played us off the park, and so that's the having sought relief in the FA Cup. We now not going to get any relief off the FA Cup at all. In fact, we're going to have to. We're out of every trophy that we're in: League Cup, UEFA Cup, FA Cup, and everybody says, well, now we can concentrate on the league. Oh, if only. Next match is a home match against Ipswich, and Ipswich aren't that much above us, not playing much better than us, and everybody's hoping, well, this is a good chance to pull away from the bottom. Dower first half 0-0, and then second half, Clive Woods 62 minutes puts Ipswich in the lead. And after that, we're just not in it. Not one of even the senior players like Gowland and Mickey Burns and Barrowclough, Tommy Casti weren't in the game. We weren't at the races in this one. Ipswich held on quite easily. Bobby Robinson's team were the best on the night, and they brought in a young defender called Russell Osman, who was to play for England eventually, and a Dutch player, Colin Vilhogen, and he was another good, strong midfielder. And they were just better than us on the night. Now Bill McGarry's getting the slow hand clap treatment, that's bad enough, but we now have to face an away game at Derby County, and
and something a bit different, Georgia, an official newspaper program.
Yes, it is different, yeah. And it was I just thought it was worth putting in because it is a proper newspaper. It isn't just isn't like a small program like they normally are, and it had lots of other information in, which I thought was quite nice. However, we go to Derby and hoping that we might get something out of the game, and we do. Mickey Burns scores on 21 minutes. Charlie George equalises on 27. And that's the way it stays to the end, and we get a 1-1 draw at Derby, which wasn't necessarily expected by people back at home. However, we our next match we come home, and we come home to a match against Manchester United of all people, it's not going to be easy. You know that the crowd's back a bit, 26,000 at the game, and Manchester United come with a star-studded team. You know, Dave Sexton's still a manager. Paddy Roach, a new Irish goalkeeper. They've got Jimmy Nicholl, Stuart Houston, Scottish fullback, Gordon McQueen, the big blonde centre half, Greenhoff, Macari, Coppell, the other Greenhoff, Jimmy. The first one was Brian, Jimmy, Joe Jordan at centre forward, and Gordon Hill. And that's a very strong Manchester United team. Our teams, Gary stays by the people he puts in. He's changed it around a bit. He puts Kennedy back to fullback. So we've got Mahoney, Kelly, Kennedy, Natras, Bird, Blackley, Barraclough, Burns, Mike Lanner, Mark McGee, and Nigel Walker. People, I mean, I've got to be included, wondered if that was going to be strong enough to hold Manchester United. Well, we shouldn't have worried because they dug their heels in, and that's exactly what they did. They went 1-0 down in 28 minutes, and everybody thought, well, here we go. Mark McGee equalised on 32, then Gordon Hill puts them in front on 39, and we think, well, that's it. We're going to lose this one, but the lads keep fighting quite hard. Mickey Burns is pulled down in the area and gets a penalty on 85 minutes. It makes it 2-2, and we get a point which nobody in the Gallagher corner thought we were going to get, not against Manchester United. So it helps our league position. It doesn't get us much off the bottom, but anyway, we've got to follow that up on the Wednesday night with a league home game against Birmingham City, and now Birmingham aren't playing very well, and everybody thinks, well, this is a one we should win because we could actually make a gap between ourselves and the bottom. However, the crowd's not showing much enthusiasm. Only 19,000 at this game. Team unchanged: Mahoney, Kelly, Kennedy, Natras, Bird, Blackley. Stuart Robinson comes in, Mickey Burns, Mike Larner, Mark McGee, and Nigel Walker. And Birmingham City come. Now, Birmingham have just changed their manager, and their manager is somebody called Jim Smith. Now, that's somebody we're going to get to know much much more about at some stage at Newcastle. The Birmingham team, Jim Montgomery, of course, from the Mackhams, Jimmy Calderwood from Tottenham, Pat Howard from us, Penry, Broadhurst, Joe Gallagher, Terry Hibbert, our ex midfielder, and John Connolly, who they bought from Manchester United, and then on the ring, of course, Trevor Francis, the star young player. We look like we're in for a hard night. 8 minutes, Trevor Francis just runs through the defence and slots the ball past the goalkeeper, and everybody's thinking it's going to be a defeat. And the lot that walk away when the 10-minute flag comes down in the Gallagher corner, of course, they're halfway down the Haymarket bus station when Irvin Natras gets to an equaliser on 85 minutes and gets to a 1-1 draw. People wanted to win, but a draw is better than nothing. And we're at least in a position to have a go at getting off the bottom of the league. And so we want to hope that they're going to have a real go. Next game is at Chelsea, and we know it's going to be a tough game, but they're not unbeatable, and they aren't as strong as people first predicted. They're only about middle of the table, and we go to Chelsea with the same team, Mick Mahoney, Natras, Kennedy, Bird, Blackley, another junior comes in, Jamie Scott, Mickey Burns, Lanark, Mark McGee and Nigel Walker. The one thing about Bill McGarry, he did introduce one or two promising youngsters into the squad while he was managing it, and that was a very positive thing. 22,000 at the game, which isn't a big crowd for Chelsea, which suggests more about the way they're playing than anything else. Keith Shilton, Ken Silato is the manager, an ex-player. Peter Bonetti's in goal, England goalkeeper. Gary Locke, Steve Wicks, Bomber Harris, Britain. Ray Wilkins, who's have a big international career. Ray Lewington, who a tidy player, but is another one who's part of the England managers' training squad, medical squad. Ray Lewington, I think he's one of the physiotherapists still. Tommy Langley and Chris Walker. A good game, and one where the lads dig in and really have a go. Mickey Burns on 21 minutes puts you in the lead, and on 50 minutes, Mark McGee makes it 2-0, and everybody's thinking, "Wow, we're going to get 3 points here." Well, unfortunately, Bomber Harris scores one of his rare goals on 52 minutes, and then Kenny Swain, a young lad that they put on it as a substitute, scores on 79 minutes to make it 2-2. But still, if it said to people, will a draw do at Chelsea? Most people would have said yes, please. I think that there was any doubt about that. So we're back. The next match is a home game to Everton, and because it's a home game, and having performed so well at Everton when we went down there and got a 4-4 draw, everybody's hoping that we'll get something out of this game at St James's. Crowds recovered slightly, 26,000 at the game with unchanged team, Mahoney, Natras, Kennedy, etc., and with Mark McGee and Mike Lanner's Scottish forwards leading with Nigel Walker on the left. Everton full team, Wood in goal, Dave Jones, Mike Pejic at fullback, Nick Lyons, Terry Derricott, Trevor Rees, Andy King, Martin Dobson, George Telfer. George Telfer, a Scots midfielder that they brought down from Rangers. Bob Latchford, and Duncan McKenzie, who they'd bought from Leeds United, a very tricky, slightly built centre forward, not very big, but very, very tricky indeed, and made quite a career of himself from Leeds, Nottingham Forest, and Everton, and became a seasoned international. Well, the problem for us was he played like a hero in this game. He was outstanding. Laid on the first goal for Latchford in 15 minutes, then on 48 minutes scored the second. And it was another match where Newcastle just didn't show up, unfortunately. And the crowd at St James's let Bill McGarry know what they thought about it as well. So we're now vying between bottom and second bottom in the league, where results are so poor. And next we've got an away match at Nottingham Forest, and we know that we're not going to have much out of this one with Cloughie and the team he's building now, and the reputation he's building. And so is Peter Shilton, David Needham, and guess who appears at left back for them? Frank Clark, Kenny Burns, Viv Anderson, John Robertson, Archie Gemmell, John O'Hare, ex-Mackham, Martin O'Neill, Tony Woodcock, and Peter With at centre forward. So a strong Forest team. Our team's unchanged: Mahoney, Natras, Kennedy, etc. It's going to be a hard one, this one, because Cloughie's got Nottingham Forest playing out of their skin at the moment. And 33 minutes, John Robertson scores from a penalty. And then 68 minutes, Viv Anderson scores from a free kick just outside our penalty area. So Forest get a 2-0, 35,000 at the City ground. And we never looked like being in the game, is the honest answer. And simply cemented were miserable position in the league at this stage, and have to think about how we're going to get out of it. And of course, the last thing we need is to be playing somebody like Manchester City for our next match, and that's who we're playing in our next match, which is a home match at St James's against the City team that give her a shellacking at Main Road. However, our team's unchanged. Mahoney, Natras, Kennedy, etc. Manchester City with Tony Booth as their manager, Corrigan, same team that beat were at Main Road, Donaghy, Booth, Watson, Power, Gary Owen, Mike Doyle, Roger Palmer, and Mick Shannon, who was eventually to come to Newcastle United, of course. They'd got him from Southampton, and eventually came to us. Peter Barnes was a very attractive winger for them. So they were playing quite well, and people were concerned. Only 20,000 at the game, and we fingers crossed, hope we might get something out of it. And for once, our hopes were realised. Roger Palmer put them ahead in 15 minutes. 53 minutes, Alan Kennedy equalised. 70 minutes, Roger Palmer again put City 2-1 in the lead. And then John Bird, on 91 minutes, a header from a corner, got with 2-2 draw. And a big sigh of relief, because that just lifts off the bottom of the league. It's a help, is all I'd say. But it still doesn't get rid of the awful feeling that is in the ground, that we're headed for something awful. The next game's an away game at Bristol City, and they're not much better than us. They're only a couple of places above us in the league, and we think, well, have a go at them and we might get something. Well, have a go at them. We did, but we didn't get anything at all. Own goal on 18 minutes. And then Tommy Ritchie, 49 minutes. Norman Hunter, of all people, on 54 minutes from a corner. And Stuart Barraclough on 88 minutes gets us a consolation towards the end. So even Bristol City are taking us to the cleaners and just reminding us of how poor we are at the moment, and not getting anything out of that. So we come back to Coventry. We've got another away game following that at Coventry City. Now, Coventry City are one of the teams that's hanging around the bottom of the league like bad breath with us. And we go to Highfield Road, 27,000 at the game, which is a big crowd for them. And we take unchanged team, Mahoney, Blackhall, Kennedy, etc. And Coventry team with Jim Bly, Keith Osgood, the bought from Chelsea, Jim Holton, the bought from Arsenal, Terry Yorath from Leeds, Terry Hutchison from Manchester City, John Beck from West Ham, Ian Wallace and Alan Green, who had come across from Manchester. And they weren't playing that much better than us, but there were 3 or 4 positions above us, but still in a place where we could have had a go at them and try to get something out of it. Well, we did get something out of it, but it was a miserable 0-0 draw. They could have played another match and never scored, both teams. Absolutely awful game, sadly. And never mind, it's a point, and it keeps off the bottom, just off the bottom 9. And so we've got to come home now to a game against Aston Villa. And Aston Villa are not doing too badly. They're well above mid-table. And so we going to have to dig in for this one. And we field the same team, Mahoney, Blackhall, Kennedy, etc. And Aston Villa come with their team with Ron Saunders as now the manager, the flamboyant Ron Saunders. Jimmy Rimmer, a goalkeeper they just bought from Manchester United. John Gregory, Graham Gordon Smith, Leighton Phillips, Welsh international. Dennis Mortimer that came from Chelsea. Gordon Cowans, who came from West Ham. Brian Little and John Dehan. Brian Little, of course, a Geordie from Chesley Street. And Villa play well, and of course the last thing that we want is for to go behind. Well, 67 minutes. That's exactly what happens, and people think, well, that's the end of that. But though 77 minutes and Mickey Burns gets an equaliser, so we get 1-1. So the point keeps us off rock bottom, which is something. And there's enough games left to get us off the bottom. The next game's away to West Brom, and they at the Hawthorns, only 18,000 at the game. Ron Atkinson is their manager. He's shifted to there by now. In their teams, the team that played us before with Derek Statham, Brian Robson, of course, Middlesbrough and Manchester United, or eventually Manchester United, Glenn Cantello, John Truick, who we eventually buy, Alistair Brown, Cyril Regis, Tony Brown, and Laurie Cunningham. Quite a strong West Brom team. And the question is, could our usual team, which is who we send, Mahoney, Blackhall, Kennedy, Natras, or Kenny Mitchell comes in at the team, another youngster that McGarry uses, Barraclough, Mickey Burns, Mark McGee, Ralph Callaghan, and Jamie Scott. And It's all going well. First half, we give as good as we get. Quite an attractive game. But then on 50 minutes, Cyril Regis at a corner out jumps the rest of the Newcastle defence, and it's 1-0. And then on 67th minutes, Paddy Mulligan, dangerous midfielder, strolls through our defence and makes it 2-0. So we're now from hoping that we might stay a couple of places off the bottom. That defeat does actually sit us right on the bottom. And as if that wasn't bad enough, our next game is an away game to Arsenal, who by now are fighting for the top with the other big clubs. And we send as McGarry sends his usual team. Slight change at fullback. He puts John Blackley in instead of David Craig, and otherwise it's the same, with Martin McGee and Nigel Walker leading the front, with Nicky Burns in the team as well, of course. And we go to Arsenal, and in first half's 0-0. Give quite a good count of ourselves, quite an attractive game. And then Mickey Burns gives us hope on 60 minutes and scores a beautiful goal. A good dribble from the right side and then across the penalty area and firing back across the goalkeeper into the far corner. Then Liam Brady, 75 minutes, equalises. And then 4 minutes later, David Price from Arsenal scores the winner to give them a 2-1 lead. And of course, in their forward line as well, and causing us all sorts of problems, was a man called Malcolm MacDonald. So to hold out the way we did with that firepower was quite good, but sadly not good enough to get anything out of the game. And we're now firmly on the bottom of the league. We go to Aston Villa, and for the next game, an away game, and the two teams are almost identical to the teams that played at St James's Park, which is interesting. They have one change. Their centre forwards changed, and a younger man called Andy Gray comes into the team, who's someone we all know quite a bit about. And our team's unchanged. 26,000 at Villa Park, and they have a go at them. Gordon Cowan scores on 25 minutes, and we think, well, we might get an equaliser, but sadly on 79 minutes, Andy Gray, the very Andy Gray that I've just spoke about, makes it 2-0 and kills us off entirely, and really does knock the stuffing out of us and fix us well and truly firmly on the bottom of the league. Next is a home game against QPR, and we all think, well, they're only a place or two above us, so they're not playing very well. Surely we can get something. Well, the crowd aren't that optimistic. And the crowd, believe it or not, 13,400, which is says it all. If you're a Newcastle supporter, that says it all. And the team's unchanged: Mahoney, Natras, Kennedy, etc., all the way down. Interestingly enough, Alan Gowland is up for transfer, believe it or not. The only real player that we had. Queen's Park Rangers come with Frank Sibley, their ex-player, still the manager. Almost the same team that played us at QPR, who were beat quite easily. Well, not this time. They give us quite a torrid time, actually. And Stan Bowles, the mercurial midfielder who, as I said, brilliant, brilliant football. I could do all sorts of things with the football, but couldn't keep out of the betting shop, unfortunately. 13,500 at St James's, as I said, which is quite tragic. But West Ham just give us the runaround. Givens on 36 minutes, Paul McGee on 40 minutes. And then just to wrap it up, John Hollands on 60 minutes. And that's a 3-0 defeat that's saddles us very firmly at the bottom of the league. We've got two games left, and to have any hope of staying up, we've got to beat them, win them both. It's not a case of draws or anything like that. We must win these two games to have any hope of staying up at all. And the next game is against Norwich at Newcastle. And if this isn't an expression of what the crowd thinks about where we're going, the crowd against Norwich, 7,886. I was there, and in the Gallagher corner, you could nearly shout to the next person to you. There were so many spaces. It wasn't a case of bumping into each other, getting pushed on the barrier. To talk to somebody, you were sort of shouting across 2 barriers to see somebody. 7,000. It was desperate. And I hope we'll never see that again, to be perfectly honest. Gary perseveres with the same team at home, and is very bullish in the press. Thinks we can do something. And Norwich have come with their team, and they've now introduced another Geordie into their team, Keith Robinson, Robert Robson rather, that played for us. He's now playing for Norwich City, and they've a tidy side, and Martin Peters still in their team, the World Cup winner, and we got off to a flying start. Alan Kennedy on 22 minutes. John Ryan equalises for them in 57. Mickey Burns on 70 minutes, and everybody thinks, oh, good, 2-1. No such luck on 88 minutes. Kevin Reeves from Norwich makes it 2-2. And we now, that point at least lifts us off the bottom, but it's not enough to do anything else. And even if we win the next game, which is an away game at Leicester, we're not going to save ourselves. So we go to Leicester, 11,500 at the game, and Leicester don't even have to break a sweat. We send the same team that we've been playing all season virtually, and Leicester beat us 3-0. Goodwin 8 minutes, Roger Davis 56, Jeff Salmon 79 minutes. Leicester win 3-0 and confine us to the second division. Most miserable season. And of course, Newcastle being Newcastle, that isn't the end of the season. We've got 2 more games. One, a friendly against Chelmsford City to help them to raise funds. I mean, really and truly, to which 1,500 turned up. And then Jimmy Smith's testimonial, which is nice. I mean, a good favourite with the crowd, Jinky, when he came down from Scotland. And I'm still puzzled as why it took this long to do his testimonial. And there's the ticket, copy of the ticket for the match as well. Nice way to finish off in some ways, but in other ways quite sad. I'm just looking to see for Jimmy Smith. Not a bad crowd for Jimmy Smith, 18,000 when you consider some others that had testimonials like Joe Harvey, who only had about 13,000. So that wasn't a bad turnout for Jimmy Smith. But an awful season is the only way to describe it. We started in the UEFA Cup with all optimism. And but what really happened was the season before we outperformed, and this next season, 77-78, we paid for it, and we paid for Richard Dennis's naivety. Nice man, I'm sure. He always came across as a nice man. But the number of people I've heard say, well, yeah, he was a nice man for a school teacher, but he wasn't a manager of a professional football club. And the incoming McGarry was such a sergeant major. I think that must have been a shock to the system for some of the players. What I did like about McGarry was, as I said, through the way through, one or two new names popped into the team, and they were junior, so he was given a chance to. And I've got no qualms about that. But not our best season, and confines were to a miserable period in the second division, I'm afraid. And Blythe Spartans cup match. When we got knocked out of the cup by Wrexham, had we won the cup, that cup match, we would have played Blythe Spartans and not Wrexham. But Spartans, and because they already had a small ground, asked for permission to play Wrexham at St James's Park, and that's it there. And believe it or not, 48,000 turned out to watch Blythe Spartans play Wrexham. When remember our last league game, we only got 7,000, and it was fantastic. It really was. The Geordies turned out to support their near neighbours in this cup tie. But the irony is had we beat Wrexham, it would have been us playing Blythe Spartans, which would have been incredible.
You also chucked this in, George, which was I think a little tribute, wasn't it? A few years later,
yes,
by Newcastle United in the programme style, etc.
Yes, yeah, and yes, and there was. Now I'm struggling for that one, Steve. Where that one's come from.
I'm not sure whether you just took that in. I'm not sure what that's. It looked like Matt Ritchie to me.
It is Matt Ritchie, yeah.
In a strip, no, maybe did we play Bohemians in a friendly or something like that? Because it's a similar
must have
strip.
done.
And then you sent me that team there with, which I'm not sure again whether this was relevant to the story or not. About that was the remaining photos left.
No, I must have.
Sent that by mistake, George.
Absolutely, it was just it must have been in that file, and so I just sent them all. Yeah.
No worries.
But anyway, that's 77, 78. Not one of the happiest seasons, I've got to say.
Definitely not. Well, hopefully you'll bring us a bit more cheer on the next Those Were the Days, George.
Fingers crossed, Steve. Good to talk to you as always, and thanks to everybody for tuning in. It's a great pleasure.
Take care, mate. Bye.
Bye, Steve.
A big thanks to all our sponsors: Skips and Bins, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, website skipsandbins.com, easy contract free and pay as you go waste collection. Thanks also to Mr. Vicky's, handmade in Cumbria. These sauces are really hot stuff. You can order them by emailing info@mrvickys.co.uk or by telephoning 01768 210 102. Thanks to Neil and the guys at Media Arts for all the help with the video side of things. And thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle, and the guys who run our website, NUFCmatters.com. If you want to subscribe to the show, hit the subscribe button tonight. It is free. Hit the thumb up under the video to like the video and click share to share to your other social media. If you want to join the channel, hit join. There's 3 different tiers. Pick the one that suits you and help support the channel financially. If you want to pay a one-off membership fee of £25 and get these goodies, a scarf, a pen, a cup, and entry into the monthly draw, then go to NUFC Matters and look for membership pack. Failing that, get your smartphone and put it over the QR code and it will take you straight there. We're also a podcast and you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, and other podcast providers. Usually goes up 24 hours after the show has finished. We also support the food bank on this channel. If you want to make a virtual donation today at the Matchday Bucket, go to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk and you can make a deposit today. Don't forget to enter the Shearer raffle. There's 150 tickets, £1 per ticket, and you can win a limited edition signed Alan Shearer ball. Enter now at nufcmatters.com. If you have a look on our website, we've also got a vast range of mugs, t-shirts, cups, and whatever else takes your fancy. The Isaac t-shirt is proven popular this month, $16.99 plus delivery from nufcmatters.com. Don't forget as well, we do a range of events over the course of the year. We have Peter Beardsley, an up-close and personal evening at the Tynemouth Surf Cafe. Limited tickets remain, 25th of April. Get them now from surfcafe.tynemouth.co.uk or from ticketweb.uk. There's also an evening with Peter Beardsley on May the 19th at the Tyneside Irish Centre, and you can get tickets from newcastlelegends.com, and tickets are £50. Don't forget our end of season do takes place 27th of May, 7 o'clock at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Tickets for that one are a tenner, and nufcmatters.com is where you can get your tickets for that. In June, Thursday the 1st of June to be precise, Rob Lee will be at Louis Liquor Store in the Big Market in Newcastle, and tickets for that are available direct from the venue. And an evening with Rob Lee, Lee Clark and John Beresford takes place the next evening on Friday the 2nd of June at the Grand Hotel in Gosforth. This is a charity event and tables are of £10, £700, and you can book them by contacting Natalie at heelandtoe.org.uk or visiting their website. In July, Gavin Peacock is in Newcastle on July the 10th at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Tickets for that are available from nufcmatters.com. And he also takes an evening with at the Surf Cafe in Tynemouth on the 11th of July. So get your tickets direct from the venue for that one as well. And if you're a boxing fan, the Night of Champions, Ricky Hatton, Frank Bruno, Nigel Benn and Joe Calzaghe takes place at the Fed. And that will be taking place on the 16th of June. More dates to be added. Tickets from all those events, www.goldstarpromotions.co.uk.